Welcome to the Conscious Marketer podcast. This is Richard here, and I'm joined by Kylie.
Hey there.
And we're pleased to introduce you to a guest, Sharon Hamilton. She's a New York Times romance author, and her title today is From Real Estate. And she writes amazing fiction about the Navy SEALs and has a whole Brotherhood series. Let you tell a little bit more about that, Sharon. Hi, Sharon.
Sure. Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. It's so great to have you as part of our call today. And I'm kind of curious if you could just maybe share with readers a little bit about your background, about how you got into real estate and then made the shift over to a writer. A really fascinating pivot in your life.
You know, I think I've always been somebody that, when something comes up and it's looking like I should go in that direction, I do. So I can't actually say, your title is Conscious Marketer. I can't actually say that I consciously made the step to do anything. It just, situations presented themselves. I got into real estate kind of by accident, and I got into writing definitely by accident, actually through tragedy. Real estate was a really great career for me, but the reason I got into it was because I could never find anybody that could sell as well as I could. And we were owners and we were trying to sell properties that we fixed up and sold. And I just could never find anybody that was clear-eyed, focused, and could deliver. And I would do things with them, hold open houses, joint open houses, and I would just take over. I don't think they had a very good time, but I would wind up selling the properties. And I did this, and people thought I had a license 10 years before I did. So I just jumped into it. So we thought, well, okay, let's try that. And that was a big career. I, was the top agent in the county for several years in a row and had a team and really enjoyed that, had a lot of success, sort of by accident,
Can you maybe share ideas about what do you think made your approach so effective even back then? Because, selling real estate and selling books is two different things, but my guess is there's probably some similarities in how you approached it.
Yes, yeah. I think women have an advantage in real estate in that there's a sort of an inherent trust that people have. Depending on how you come across, of course. If you look at somebody in the eye and give them bad news, but you're soft about it, they're going to believe you. And a lot of my career was telling people the hard facts. This is what's real. Don't believe what you said. Don't get sold by somebody who's just kind of blowing smoke. And I had sometimes people who I got on the second or third time around after they've been really burned out on other agents. And that was the biggest part of my market, was finding those people that had already had tough situations going. And I cold called, 3 hours a day, finding those people that were just so frustrated, they were about ready to shoot themselves. And I would go in and clean it up and get it done quickly and, without a lot of drama. The other thing that I've found is a lot of people make the mistake of it's all about them, or it's the drama of the transaction. Oh, it's all falling apart, and they're hiring you to have a clear head. And so I had some good coaching and good training on that. But I always did it because I was helping people, not for the money. I never did it for the money. And in a way, the writing is the same thing. I didn't realize it was going to be like that. But in writing, I've been successful, not so much because I wanted to make a lot of money, but mostly because I make people feel things. I make people feel good. I deliver a drug of choice. I give them the happily ever after in a world that, frankly, doesn't have a lot of happily ever afters in reality. And yeah, I know I am in a fantasy land. I firmly admit it. But that's where some people want to be, and that's what I give them. So the similarities between just telling the truth, you're I used to get accused of writing memos to the office when I was a realtor that made the staff cry, right? Because they do something and I give a long detailed thing about this is what had to happen, and don't put the husband and wife together because they're going to kill each other, and she thinks he's trying to poison her, and she thinks, and they would sit them in the same office, and I'd walk in and say, what did I tell you? I told you not to put them together. And of course, the staff there are all kinds of things. So I would write a memo and then the secretary would quit, right? And my broker came into me and said, don't write any more memos. Okay, so fine. So now I get paid to write stories that make people cry, right? Or make people feel bad and then they feel good. So it's kind of the same type of thing. I didn't realize the power of the written word, how it could really force somebody to act. I never even thought of that. So now in selling books, it's about being authentic, not being a big ego author. I'm always very friendly and helpful to other authors coming up through the ranks. I've been helped by big time authors that have huge followings. And I am grateful for every single reader. If I get a new reader in a day, it's a good day. Because that reader will like it and tell another reader and tell another reader and it grows sometimes slowly, but it's growing. And that's how I cultivated my real estate career. I'm still getting calls, and I haven't been selling for 12 years. People asking me to go list their house. I still get calls today.
That's super powerful. I'm curious about what you said earlier about stumbling into things. It sounds like you said that you stumbled into writing. I don't know how much creative writing you had done before that, but are people that are listening, they stumble into things too because they have a calling and their life just brings them there, and then they doubt it and they don't do it. And so I'm curious how you would speak into that.
Yeah, when I was much younger, raising kids, I've had 4 kids, and I've raised 4 kids and a husband. I tell everybody, it's a big disclaimer there. I liked writing. I loved writing. I've been journaling ever since I was 5, and writing prayers. That made people cry in Sunday school. Okay, my teacher used to cry and she'd read my prayers. And the class was like, oh God, here comes another one of Sharon's prayers. So I just decided to try writing when I was younger, and I didn't like anything I had to say. I just didn't feel like I had anything to say. I didn't start writing novels until I was 60. So my whole career was completely focused on other things. And at 60, I thought, okay, so how long am I going to wait? When I'm 80? I mean, when's a good time to start to give that part of me that's calling me, give that voice? And at the time, we were going through a very difficult time. The house prices had gone down. This is in early 2008, 2009. We actually had a partnership with an attorney that, it's our fault that the property value went down, right? So he was muscling us. We had the savings and loan situation was going crazy, and I was really not having a good time trying to negotiate for homeowners, the banks were taking their homes, and I was trying to negotiate these short sales. And it was, we had a fire, our house burned down. And so I was looking at the very real possibility at that time, after all those years and being number 1 in the county and all that, of maybe walking away with a pickup truck, a dog, and my husband, and maybe not a house, because the insurance company was giving us a hard time, and I was in an apartment all by myself while we started remodeling, and my husband was trying to control all the animals and all the contractors and everything. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to take a few months off and see if I can write, because I don't want to buy all my new suits and everything. I don't want to buy new jewelry and stuff. Let me just do a pivot here and see if it works. And so I told my husband and my daughter, give me just a little bit of time off and I'm going to do that. And it was the best thing I ever did. I mean, I sat down and in 30 days wrote 90,000 words. I had no idea that that's sort of unheard of. It was a terrible book. It had to be edited like 57 times before it probably never should have gone out, but anyway, it did. It caught fire with me. It was like, okay, this is really what I was maybe meant to do. And maybe God burned my house down, got me in a lawsuit, put all these market forces at place just to, he's like holding up these billboards saying, Sharon, it's time to change. And so I finally got it. And I never went back. I just never went back. And I enjoyed it. I don't make as much money as I did in real estate, but I enjoy it 10 times more. And then what I didn't realize at the time was the fans. What happens when you start getting these letters from women because I write a lot of Navy SEAL romances. So women who have lost a loved one, a husband that died, they're widows, or a son that was injured or died in one of the wars, or a training accident, or all kinds of things, and how much the books meant to them, and just these heartfelt letters. And now it's like I'm writing for these people. I can't quit. I have an obligation to these people. I mean, they read a lot of different authors, but I'm there to give them what they want. And just like in real estate, I was there to solve a problem. I'm doing the same thing. It's just, I'm giving them something in their heart to believe in, and a happily ever after that they may never get. They may never meet a man that treats them right. They may never have a happily ever after in their real life, but they get it in fantasy life. And I like that. I'm an entertainer. I think my broker wouldn't have liked it if I described myself as a realtor, as an entertainer. He would not have liked that, but there was a part of that too, right? You have to make it fun.
Can a little bit more about how you were drawn to write about the Navy SEALs and how that kind of folded, and
Sure.
how that's kind of become your main niche when you write?
Sure. At the time, there weren't a lot of authors writing Navy SEAL romance, and I wasn't sure I could. But I decided to try. My son was a Navy SEAL for 10 years. He was a medic. And when he first started out, I got to see the progression from straight out of high school, coming home as a swearing sailor with really more swear words than I'd ever heard. I mean, it just happened like in 6 months. He came home and all of a sudden he's swearing like a real sailor. And but he became a man. He transformed into this kind of soccer player, casual kid, good looking. All the girls loved him, but just kind of didn't really apply himself to all of a sudden a disciplined, focused young man with a purpose. And he said he felt so lucky to find that calling at such an early age, because he said he sees a lot of older people that are still looking, and they're in their 40s and 50s. And I worried about his going overseas, and I worried about all the things he was involved with, but I knew that he was doing what he loved to do. And out of a class of 197, they graduated 12 in his class, and he was one of them. He was the youngest one. And he'd do things like lay down on the beach and with their arms locked, they're wet and sandies, and he'd look up at the moon and he'd say, "Oh, I can feel the heat from the moon. It's warming me right now," And I just loved those types of conversations with him. So I definitely, romance is all about heroes. And I thought, what better than to write about those types of guys who are trained, have equipment, millions of dollars worth of equipment and training. And yet when it comes to relationships and dating and getting married, maybe having a family, some of them are not, none of them are trained in it. And some of them are very ill-equipped for that. So I write about that edge, that little slice in between there being a hero and being an honorable man at home.
You spoke a little bit before the podcast interview about happy endings. And so when you started talking about heroes, I started thinking about that because, I'm a copywriter, I'm a writer, I have an English degree. So I kind of understand basic story arcs. And, occasionally there's a story with a hero where there's not a happy ending, but not very often. So
No.
What do you think about that?
About not having a happily ever after?
No, about why we need more of them and about having them and what it does for us.
Yeah. Well, we fantasize about, I'm going to watch the news because that's real. Well, guess what? It's not real. And we downplay, the fantasy of reading a novel that's a made up story. It's like a parable. You can give a message in a novel, sometimes better than you can in a report, right? In a newscast. So I think there's a human connection that's not exercised enough, especially with women, but I think it's with men as well. And there is that desire to be connected to something greater than yourself. Okay, something, to believe in something, to believe in a time and place where everything works the way it's supposed to. We really don't hear that much in the news about good things, right? We don't, if it bleeds, it leads, that sort of thing. That's the newspaper and the news thing. And this gives people a real emotional fix to read these books about somebody who maybe wasn't really good starting out, but became a true man, a warrior, and in the end was basically healed by love. And that's the classic romance trope. He's a rough guy, rough around the edges, but he's a great warrior, goes through all these things. He can do all this stuff, and he's not so good in the interpersonal relationships. And then by the end of the book, because she's there, he's a better man. Okay. Every woman wants to be needed and loved like that. I mean, every woman wants to be essential for their man. And I write male, female. It's that way with other, with the female, male, male. I'm not being exclusive. I'm just writing about what I know. But everybody wants to be inspirational to their partner. And that's why I like to write it. And we don't do enough of it. We don't see enough of that. There's a great need for it, I think. Look at how much we spend time on Facebook and Twitter and all that. And still, we're striving for all this connection, and we still don't get enough, right?
Just your creative process when you start, say, a book series. Is it that it kind of unfolds as, each book goes along, or do you kind of know like 3 books ahead where you want it to go and then you direct it that way? I'm sure every process is different, but I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I write in series. That's a smart approach in marketing too, because then you can sell several books in a row. So if they like book one, they'll buy 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And there are a lot of people that do that. So I tend to write in series, either different couples or the same couple in over a span of, say, 4 or 5 books, because you want the reader to come back and I want to find out what's happening to them. And now I'm starting to write books 10 years later or a year later to see what happens with their families, with their children as they grow up. You can do that when you've been doing this a while. So I think the process starts when I first started out. Sometimes I'd start with the sex theme, believe it or not, the big coming together, the spark, the energy of the relationship. And then I'd go right up to it, and then I'd write from then to the end. That worked when I didn't have a lot of backlist books and other things to pull me in. Now I get the character sketch first. I decide what kind of a man, and it's usually based on a man, I want, and what's his background. I create this character. Where did he grow up? How old is he? What have been his life experiences? And I start with the character. And what would be the worst thing in the world that would happen to a super controlling, godlike warrior? Well, somebody that doesn't follow instructions, or somebody he can't control, right? So guess who comes along, and that's those frictions are what make for good story in the middle of that. So I usually start with the character, and then maybe I'm going to play off another character. Maybe he's helping somebody. Maybe he's an enemy of somebody. Maybe he's, it depends on what his world is like. Maybe he's a loner. And then I throw things at him that he has to deal with that reveal more of his character and show a change in his personality. And that's what a good story is. It shows a change.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. As a brand storyteller, if there's no transformation, there's no story.
There's no story.
No story. I'm so curious about the publishing aspect of what you're talking about. I know there's probably a lot of people listening who do want to write or publish a book. And one of the things I've heard is that if you don't have a huge social media following, publishers are not interested in you. What's your experience with that?
Well, I think that is true, but I'm not so sure getting a publisher is the right mode either. And the lucky thing is that right around the time when I was coming online, that became, we had these gatekeepers that only let 2 or 3% of all the manuscripts through and published them. And we had all this material behind the gate. Well, and then all of a sudden somebody found out, independent publishing, you could go around and Amazon would take your book and you could sell on Amazon. Oh my gosh. And you could actually get a better split than you could with a publisher. So all of a sudden everybody did the end run, and I got started right during that time. I wouldn't probably encourage anybody to get a publishing contract. I would encourage anybody to do it independently. And if you're going to expand your social media, do it so you can expand your connection to your readers and get more readers, have your newsletter, have all kinds of magnets that bring people into you from different things, whether it's the blog, your website, your Facebook presence. But don't just stick to one. You have to do them all. And like I said, if you convert one new reader a day, that reader who likes your books is going to tell, 10 others at least. And if they don't, they will tell probably 20 other people how lousy you are. So,
Which is
no. And with Amazon, there are books that are now, and other retailers too, there are books now getting published that never would have been published if it was just left up to the big 5 publishers. So it's kind of nice because there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of niches. There's a lot of stories that kind of fall in and just take off. So there's a lot more opportunity now than there ever was before. And it's only expanding. There is more competition too, but there's just a lot more opportunity in publishing. So there never was a better time to be an author and to find your audience and your voice. And if you're persistent at it and you love it enough, you will be a success.
That because it goes against so much of what is said out there.
Yep. Well, the publishers pay 8 cents a book. I get, 40 to 60 cents, 60% of my list price. So, there's a big difference. I don't have to sell 100,000 books in a month. I mean, it would be nice, but I still make a good income being independently published. And I can choose my deadlines. I can pull a book down, redo it. I can change the cover as many times as I want. I can add a bonus story and repackage it. I can put 3 or 4 books together as a bundle. I can make that bundle 99 cents for 2 weeks. I can do all kinds of things when you have a backlist of 72 books like I have. So it is marketing, it's packaging. It's taking that little box of M&Ms and dividing them up into 10 spaces, and you make, 3 times the amount that you did with the original packet. That's what it is.
Can you share a little bit about, because you just said it casually, but you've written 72 books. So there's an immense amount of discipline and grit, and you obviously have produced a lot of books in a short period of time. Can you give maybe some aspiring authors some ideas on how they can be maybe even half as prolific or maybe a quarter as prolific as you?
I spend as much time thinking about the book as I do writing it. I spend part of that thinking about the book is becoming the character in the book. I will freely admit that I am the heroine in these books. My personal life isn't anything like theirs, but I get to live that way. And so it's like a cosplay. It's almost like I'm going to a convention dressed up as a Klingon so I can figure out how it feels to be a Klingon. Well, that's what I'm doing with my books. So I also have music that inspires me, puts me in a certain mood. Candles, I like stuff in my room, things that I've collected. I have a little box of nice little notes I've received from people. I don't just sit down and decide to write and look at a blank page. I put some effort into wearing the right kind of clothes, having the right lighting, having the right environment, and creating the stage for it to happen. That makes it so much easier to write, especially if you're going to write emotional things. And that's, if you make people cry, they will, if you elicit a strong emotion in your reader, they will stick with you. You don't want to lose the reader halfway through the book, that thread. They just go, oh, this is boring. I don't like this. It doesn't do anything for me. They'll put it down and may not ever pick it up again. So I spend time getting into it. And I am that character in the book.
Can you get 3 or 4 ways that you would make a book more emotional besides what you just said?
Okay. Well, the perfect example is you can do all kinds of little exercises. You could say, okay, this guy has his best friend, and the two of them are best buddies. What if the buddy is really the anti-hero? What if he's really his enemy, but he doesn't know? All right. So you could take a story that you're working on, and then all of a sudden, oh, that buddy could be an enemy. You could turn that around, make that, raise the stakes. What's his name? The guy that did the A-Team, that author. Who was it? Anyway, he's passed away now, but I heard him speak, and he says you have a cat stuck in a tree. So somebody wants to get their cat in the tree. What if that person is late for work and their boss has said, if you're late one more time, you're going to get fired, and she has to have her job because she's supporting her mother who's dying of cancer. All of a sudden you layer all these things on top of it. So it's not just a cat in a tree. It's a cat in a tree that has to be rescued in a certain amount of time so that her mother, is taken care of, so she doesn't lose her job. And those are the layers that you add on. So you can do that when you edit, when you go back in. That's when I pull out all the jewels. I go, oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that. And it's cruel sometimes, some of the things I do to my characters. It's just cruel. You think, oh, I finally found it. And then it all falls apart. It's like the hero's journey, right? It goes to a certain part. We think we got it. We got the team, all our allies, and then it falls apart. And then, okay, we'll gather together again and try it again, and then it falls apart. And then at the very end, it almost falls apart again. And that time, everybody's going to be wiped out or whatever. And then it turns out. So that's sort of the arc of how it goes. Does that make sense? Did I make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Like raising the stakes too is definitely, if you ask any Hollywood screenwriter, they're going to throw that out as a way to make things, give it tension, make things more emotional. I always tell my clients, because we're writing marketing copy, so it's not exactly a full hero's journey arc. It might be one ad, it might be one email. So I always tell them the most important thing you can do to make it more emotional is to give as many sensory details as humanly possible.
That's true. Yes, that's true. That's true. Not only just sensory, but, like guts and fears and, that's why when you start with a character, like in Indiana Jones, he's hanging from that statue and looking down below him. What does he hate more than anything else? Snakes, and that's what he says, snakes. Well, that type of thing, you give him the one thing that would give him the biggest problem. And so maybe in writing copy, you have a problem that you're trying to bridge, show here's a solution to that problem, or here's a suggestion about it. And you show the problem, show the solution. And I think that's, somebody goes, oh, I'm saved. That's what they should be doing. This is the answer. This is it. You want to elicit a response. My ads are the same way. You give a little teaser and a nice hunky guy chest and I'm never going to leave you, or you're the best thing that ever happened to me, or yes, but I'm going, or I don't know. That's terrible copy. But anyway, something that somebody goes, oh no, I want to know what happened. Right.
As long as there's no snakes, I'm cool.
Me too. I'm with you.
Really wonderful to talk to you, Sharon. I'm wondering if...
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
So sorry.
We can edit that out, no problem.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing, Sharon. And I was wondering maybe if you could leave our readers. I know there's probably, what's really inspiring for me is that you're writing to inspire your readers. And it also sounds like you also inspire a lot of other writers to just get out there and do it. I was wondering if you could maybe share at the end here, like if somebody's thinking of writing the book or thinking of going on that adventure or taking a risk, what would your advice to be to inspire them to take greater action to create?
Yeah, I would say that everybody does have a story in them. Everybody can be a good writer. Everybody has at least one. And I think that it's not an easy job, but it's a job where there is no ceiling. There's nobody telling you, like used to be, what you can and cannot do. So it's wide open. So taking the chance to go forward. It's kind of like what I used to do in real estate when I was cold calling. It's like my dad said, "How can you do that?" How can you do that? And I'd say, well, all I can say is no. And really, the worst that can happen is they won't buy your book. But you become a good writer by writing. And I now consider myself a good writer after 72 books. Now, you don't have to write 72 books to be a good writer, but I get better with every book I write. And there are a lot of authors that sit on their first 20 manuscripts, but they're not a waste of time. It's taught them how to write. I think you should just write, edit, do the best you can, send it off, and then start all over again. It's just like, it's the same routine, and not to give up until you get to where you want to be. I'm convinced that I can do this until I'm 90, or later. So don't give up, and be careful whose advice you take, like these rules. You can't do this, you can't do. Watch out. Look at who they really are, because they don't always tell you the truth. They don't, even prolific writers will say something or another, and sometimes they're really not telling you the truth. That's not really what happened for them. So be careful whose advice you take, and just use your gut and your own intuition. And if you think you can be a good writer, you can be. It can all be learned. Yeah.
Good. Thank you so much. Where can
You're
people
welcome.
find out more about you?
I have a website. It's SharonHamiltonAuthor.com. I am on Facebook, author Sharon Hamilton. And I have a newsletter sign up, which is on my website. If you go in to sign up for the newsletter, you'll start getting some emails sequencing, so you'll learn about all of my books. And I have audiobooks too, which are also fun. You can also listen to some of the audiobooks on my website. So just go in there and play around for a bit. And I usually answer emails too. I like hearing from people, so don't be shy.
Thanks so much, Sharon, for spending the time, and thanks for
You're
all
welcome.
the listeners listening to this episode. And you can get the show notes and more information links if you go to consciousmarketer.com/. And we'll list some of the links to Sharon's books on Amazon and Audible. So thank you so much, Sharon. You're so refreshing I think it's amazing what you've done becoming a writer, and also the genre that you have kind of mastered and will continue to go forward. It'll be interesting to see what you do with your next 20 plus
Thank
years.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.